Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry.
No,
You know,
good point.
I was talking to somebody today about, about the education sector and how the education sector, a bit like the health system, a little bit like, the wealth system, has is in the dark ages, is not delivering upon what is needed and the way it needs to be updated massively. But people keep going through the system and saying, yes, it needs to change, it needs to change. And 20 years go by, yes, it needs to change, it needs to change, and nobody changes it. And I think it's like I said to somebody today, a point comes where you stop expecting those up there. I don't mean God, I mean,
Powers that
presidents,
be.
prime ministers, etc. You stop expecting them to change because they won't. So instead, you change it from the bottom up, and the bottom up is us talking to our audience, talking to our network, and making them aware of that little inkling they'll already have. But most people prefer to be soldiers. Most people prefer to be told what to do. It's much easier to be told what to do. But actually, once they hear about what we have to talk about, it's up to them then. They either do something with it or their status quo continues. But I know my status quo is not continuing in any way, shape, or form because I am fed up of other people who are far, far less intelligent, far, far less capable, leading us all generically down a path that you just don't understand why they're taking us down that path. So I think, everything that's being said here, what we're saying, we're going to have people attracted into us, but have no doubt we are going to be expected to be the leaders because people prefer being led. That's the ultimate truth. They prefer being led. They like agreeing and they like going rah rah rah. I support you, but they will still expect to be led because that's how they have been educated
Or trained. They've been
or
trained to
trained.
follow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or trained.
It's almost
Yeah,
it's grassroots in a
yeah.
way.
Okay.
And then
I
even
agree.
within what we're doing, there could be pockets of groups of people where let's say people are passionate about education and they want to change the education, but they don't know what to do. And now you have a group of people who all want to do that. And now they're working together to change it or to change things with health. It's like, so yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple of things to unpack here because Leslie, you're absolutely right. These things aren't changing, but what I've recognized, over time is that they're not going to. That the people who really are running the show created all of this stuff to disempower us. So, I mean, they're not going to change any of it. And you're absolutely right. You know, this is a grassroots thing. I think there's also just remembering, because when you were just talking a minute ago, I was reminded of my former sister-in-law who said, very openly to me, a number of times over the years. She goes, I know you're right about all of this, but it's just easier for me to take a pill. I'm really not interested in taking responsibility for the rest of it. And she's not, but she's not our audience.
No.
Our audience really is open. And like some of the research that I've done about, this female audience is, Leslie, you're right. We are looking for leadership, but this audience really does like to do its own research and form its own opinions. It's just looking for things that they can believe in.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things I was reminded of when we were speaking, in this conversation was, I remember years ago, being introduced to the idea that we create our own reality, which is, kind of underpinning what we're speaking about here. And I mean, this was back, 30 some years ago. And I remember thinking, okay, if it's true that we create our own reality, and my gut tells me that it is, we need to understand how we do that, or else this is going to be just something else for us to beat ourselves up about. So I think that's the other thing that's really important about what we're bringing, is not just the truth, but how to live it. If we know that, the old you know, the pharmaceutical paradigm doesn't really work. We need to introduce things that do work. If we know that, again, I was so struck by it because I was rereading the book recently, but you know, the lady who actually wrote The Having, I really don't like her writing style at all. I mean, I find it really simplistic and kind of dumb. And it's culturally very, very different. It feels different than what I experience, but she is very much describing, you know, a world where, you know, you're just looking for a good job and to save as much as possible. Like
Yeah.
it's entirely, I was reminded, you know, Sherry, because you talked, it's entirely a pie mentality. There's no sense of a fountain. There's no sense of what real wealth is. I found it to be a very interesting perspective and probably one that many, many people share. But, you know, she needed to find a different way of being. You know, she didn't quit her job until she realized what else it was, you know, she could do. So I think that's I'm repeating myself, an important part of what we need to bring forth is
Okay.
that we've got, you know, we've got tools to share. We
Yeah.
have approaches,
Yeah.
we have things that work.
Yeah, totally agree. And what was really interesting today, I had a call with a teacher who is looking at utilizing my school program. And he said, yeah, we teach employability, and we're looking at putting it the session within employability. And I thought, Jesus Christ, employability. Is that the only option that you are giving your students? Employability. In the era of AI, it is not about employability. It is about creating your own way to do things. And if you want to be employed, fair enough, but understand the dangers that comes with, specifically now because of AI. But actually, it shouldn't be about employability. It should quite simply be called life skills. Teach them the life skills and then allow that young person to make a decision, not be funneling them. How can we make you employable? And that goes back to why the education sector started in the first place, you know, back in the 18th century. Very, very different world to where we are today. And the problem I have right now, I can't challenge him because I need him to take my program in order to educate his students with what they need to be educating him. But teachers are so out of touch with the real world because they are in, you know, they're in the education world, and the education world is very, very different to the real world. And it leaves me really, really upset to think that tomorrow's generation, you know, the teenagers coming through now, are being so badly let down over and over and over again. Now, these conversations I'll be very, very happy to have on the podcast, very, very happy, because a point is going to come where we have to say these things about the wealth system, about the health system, about the education system, you know, everything that creates our reality, basically, whether that reality is real or not. But to have a teacher say, yeah, we're going to teach it within employability. And I thought, my God, do you, and he's quite a young guy, he's probably late 20s. And I thought, can you not hear yourself? Can you not hear how you have adopted the language that is not of the 21st, is not of 2024? It's going back to 1984 or 1954. And that is really frustrating me. And that's why I'm really excited with what we are doing, because I think more people will start going, alive. She's right. Hadn't thought about it that way. They're right. Hadn't thought about it that way. And more people will start asking questions and stop accepting in quite the same way as they are.
Listen, I
100%. I mean, if you really, I listened to a podcast, I don't know, 10 years, no, I was in Madison. So 7 years ago, And it was talking about how the traditional school system was created, and it was created to make people factory workers, not just employable, but
Yeah.
factory workers. It was
Yeah.
created so you did not ever question the system. And what you've got going on in the education system is no different than what you've got going on in the traditional medical model. This
Yeah.
is the way they were trained. This is how they were educated, and they don't take it upon themselves once they have that diploma or degree or whatever to keep up with how might this look different now? How might we need to change this? Nobody thinks about it. It's what we've been trained in. It's foundational. This is how it works. And that's why we were so thrilled in the US when the Montessori schools came on the scene.
You
Mhm.
bet.
At least we were teaching people differently. And Mind Valley Academy does this thing where once a year, people leave their lives, leave their jobs, leave their homes, and go to a country, to a group city environment where there's 1,000 people all thinking upon the same mindset of consciousness, and they live life that way, and they experience what it's like not to be part of the systems that they're part of on a daily basis. And it's just, if you listen to Vishen Lakhiani, he'll tell you schools are unnecessary. They really are.
You know, Leslie, when you mentioned employability, and I'm just, you know, tagging on to what Laura just said, I would say that for my generation, for our generation, it really was about employability.
Yeah, I agree.
And
For our generation,
well-
absolutely. Yeah.
and there were better reasons for it. Because when I think back, you know, like when I was coming into the workforce, the baby boomers really were, I think we were born at a really good time. You know, I mean, the music was amazing and, you know, all of that, but there really were jobs. So that model for my generation worked.
Yeah,
You know,
agree.
I went to school, I got my MBA at night, you know, like I succeeded in that thing. And when you, in effect, I mean, you know, sold your soul for employability, you actually got something in those days. You know, that job you pretty much could stay in for as long as you wanted to. And
Right.
you had complete what was I thought of as healthcare insurance, you know, at the time, and pension. And the bank that I worked for had a 200% match for a 401ks. I mean, I had 6 weeks vacation. You know, you know, you give up some of yourself for a salary, but it was substantive.
Yeah.
These days, from what I can tell, and you know what they say about the millennials, there ain't that stuff.
I agree.
You know, it's jobs, to the extent there are jobs, are more gig. They don't have the benefits that we had. They don't have the security that we had. So the whole thing about employability offers so much less
Yeah.
to
And
this
that was my point.
generation than to ours.
Exactly.
And the other side of it is, and you know, I've expressed, I'm a very frustrated entrepreneur. I've always felt this way, that it is so, that was one of the things that a little irritated me, you know, at the end of the book, because, you know, the guru asked her, do you think it's easier or harder now to create wealth than, you know, for your parents? And she had to actually think about it and say, well, I think it's harder now because, you know, all of the experts are saying that unless you inherit money, you can't create wealth. I mean, she actually thinks that way, the person who wrote this book. At the end of the book, that was her answer. I'm not terribly impressed with her, to tell you the truth, other than that she brought this forth. But I look at it completely differently, because I remember, do you guys? My father was in the printing business. When you had a resume in those days, you had to get it printed.
Correct.
Everything was freaking brick and mortar. If you wanted to do anything, start a little business on the side, because I always had a little something on the side. It cost money to do stuff that it doesn't cost anymore. We had to get things printed. You wanted to do a workshop, you had to get it printed. You need address labels, you needed stamps. I mean, I remember throwing away money to try to make money. But the way business was done, you had to get things copied at a copy shop. To send a document to somebody, it was expensive. It cost nothing to I mean, do you remember what it was like to try to get a website in place years ago?
Yeah.
It wasn't the $15 a month that you can get now, instantaneously on GoDaddy.
Well, that's where
It costs
technology is.
nothing for us to put our stuff out in the world these days. I mean, look at what we're doing. We're mounting something huge and global. And clearly it's taking a lot of time. But in terms of, like financial expenditure, you can do almost anything these days for almost nothing. And nobody, I don't hear anybody saying that.
Yeah, but
Because
the
they're not
professionalism of
what's
things.
your inner value that you're trying to put out. It's still, how do I fit what the world is looking for and willing to pay for? It's a real shift in mindset, I'm saying here, from a complete outer authority to a complete inner authority. That's what I actually have experienced as this journey.
Yeah.
Is a shift in authority from outer to inner. And
Well,
that's
to your point, Susan, on some things, number one, you're right. We worked, we have got money, we saved, that whole idea of saving and doing all that. And then a lot of us got bit in the ass in 2008 when the stock market crashed. And I was like, now what? All those years, now what do you do? So that was one thing. And also to what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you as how technology has come about and made a lot of things easier. But then again, and I'm looking at us, the professionalism of things. Talk about a resume. Do kids even have business card? What happened to business cards? Remember, wherever you went, you gave somebody a business card, and that was a point of contact. People don't even do that anymore. So there are a lot of things that have shifted. I'm not sure if it's for the good, for the better or the worse, but I think we go back to education again. And as you were talking, I find it funny because remember, I taught pre-K and kindergarten, and I remember parents saying to me, and I thought back, like I always, like if the kids wanted to color outside the lines, bravo. And I remember parents saying to me when I was teaching kindergarten, but the public schools are, because I taught private, the public schools are teaching them how to read, and my kid can't read yet. And I said, give them a chance. We're giving them the foundations, but they play with blocks all day. Well, do you know what they're learning? They're learning math skills. They're learning shapes. They're learning spatial parameter. They're learning. They will be able to read once they have, they have to. But right now they're learning how to socialize, first of all, and get along with other kids. And maybe that's one of the most important things. So, yeah, as you were talking about education, it's like the military. We get you in because we all want you to think the same way. Because we want to give you an order and we want you to follow it. And we don't want anybody making choices or doing things on their own because that will throw us everything in askew. So, yeah, I mean, and that's why a lot of people are homeschooling their kids. I don't know how popular it is over in England, but a lot of people have pulled their kids out of school and they're homeschooling because, especially here in Florida, thanks to our governor, the school system is horrible and they teach to test. They teach for the state test and the scoring, the scores on tests, because then that reflects on the schools and that's how they get their money. It's not whether the kids are learning things or doing well. That it's not that at all. It's all about the holy dollar. Comes back to money. We just came around circle.
Yeah, totally agree.
well,
And now we're up against these cyber hacks.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
what's going on with that?
So, well, there was a big one that got stopped about a month ago. And stopping it was like putting a finger in a dam. I mean, right now, I didn't know this because I don't watch the news, but I always find out what I need to know, right? So I had, for the first time in 3 years, taken my car in to get something fixed because the timing cap is leaking. And they needed my car for a couple of days. So last week I made the appointment. The guy says, you're going to need your insurance card and your driver's license because we're going to give you a loaner. We have to have your car for 2 days. So I get there and I pull in and I'm all set, got my paperwork in my hand. And the guy goes, what are you here for? And I'm like, there's a cap that's leaking under the hood. No, I didn't remember what it was. That wasn't my assignment to remember what was getting fixed, right? And I said, well, I have an appointment. I'm Lori Falk. And he goes, yeah, you don't know what's going on, do you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
clearly, no. So 15,000 car dealerships since last Tuesday have been shut down because they can't get into their computer software for scheduling, or wait for it,
Right.
they can't even sell cars.
Susan
No.
Evelyn told, we heard this from the other night on the Hauser call.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all was fine. We figured out that it was the timing cap that was leaking, because I said, well, you need it for 2 days. Does that help you? And he goes, oh, the timing cap, because it's got a, whatever. I'm like, okay, all right. I got the very last loaner car that they had.
Wow.
I mean, the whole system, 15,000 dealerships across the country. And it's the software company that's holding these dealerships ransom. They want like millions and tens of millions of dollars before they'll put them up and running again. Now, that's just one teeny little example in one teeny little, not teeny industry, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, so back to your point, Leslie, teaching kids how to be creative, how to solve problems, how to be, thinking outside of the box is essential, because how do you get around these things? I mean, they could shut down the internet. I mean, we don't need biological warfare.
No,
The
agreed.
internet is really probably, you go after the internet and you can stop a country like that.
But I
Okay.
have to admit, I think this is a potentially important conversation. And I have to admit, I'm choosing on some level to be in denial about the level of vulnerability that we're living in with everything. Because when I think about it, it kind of freaks me out.
Oh, I
And-
agree. I agree.
And I kind of come back to, I will just on the other side that I think all of this is accurate. I think all of these concerns are valid. We've seen in the last few years how things can globally go really off the rails, with consequences. And I also believe we have an inner reality that we get to choose to a large extent. And not to be cavalier about anything, but, and Sherry knows this because we had this conversation. But when I, 4 years ago saw what was going down, I remember thinking, whatever's about to happen is going to be huge. And I feel spiritually prepared for it. And whatever it is, I'm gonna come out of this like gold. And I really had a sense, and there's a metaphor that I used, that humanity needed to be going through a big shakeup, but I didn't. And I was going to kind of sit it out. And the metaphor that I used, you know what it's like when you're at the beach in the ocean and there's, big waves and stuff. I remember when I was really little, because I lived, in that environment, that when there was a really big wave coming, the best thing to do was like go under it. And I really felt like with the whole lockdown pandemic situation, that entire period, that's what I did. I kind of, I made a decision because this really has nothing to do with me. I'm not involving myself with this crap. And I created like a little world. It was what Healy came out and, everything else that many of us were doing shut down. I was doing retreats in 2019 and, that went up in smoke, but everything went online and it changed my life in some really very positive ways. I wouldn't have met any of you, if that hadn't all happened. And I feel again, there are things going on out there and some of it we don't have any control about, but
No.
some of it we do in terms of our relationship to it. And I think also, we sign up for different things.
Yes.
I didn't sign up for that. And it was a choice that I made, really. Like this has nothing to do with me. I don't need to have this experience and I'm not gonna. And I didn't. And, you know, Sherry mentioned the group that we have. We've been meeting for, you know, almost 3.5 years now. I'm exaggerating, but, you know, just, we've had every other week a Zoom, you know, of sanity about all of this. And we made it through, you know, with,
Really?
and as I think I've shared, you know, we even had a Zoom on Christmas Day in 2021 because most of the group had been uninvited by their families for the holiday.
Right. So the topic really is the importance of holding the light. That being one of the subtopics or reasons.
Mhm.
And just like it's a subtopic or a reason why we have to do something about the education system, wanting to make people employable. I mean, there are reasons behind it.
And I think that'll be a great episode, frankly,
Mhm.
I agree.
you know, and
I
I'm
agree.
sure there'll be a, you know, a wonderful voice that's involved with that. You know, a woman who can really speak to that. I think that's another really important thing to bring forth. I do.
Yes. I want to say thank you to Sherry for the notes from last time and the calendar.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm glad. I tried to capture everything, so, yeah, and I think once Jenny gets that, and I don't know if you saw Jenny texted something about, I guess the transfer of something didn't go through, so the landlord was freaking out there, so she was in the midst of, trying to get things settled, so she said, you know,
Okay,
she'll jump
got it.
on if she can.
Got it. Just calendar stuff. There was another item. I don't know if
I got
we-
yours, Susan, I'm sorry, and I apologize, your stuff came in after I did that.
No problem.
But
I
if
saw- I
there
saw-
are, yeah, I do have the new, I added it to my copy, which I figured I'll send out once I get Jenny's stuff, and I'll put my stuff in, and then I'll send it out. But at least it gave us an idea of, you know, where there are,
Okay, I
where
just
we
wanted to
are.
make sure, because it occurred to me, I didn't remember saying it or hearing anybody say it, that next Thursday is a holiday, is 4th of
July
July.
4th.
Oh,
Oh yes, yeah, so it is.
It's
Yeah.
a national holiday here in the US.
I got engaged on Independence Day in Boston.
There seems to be something ironic about getting engaged on
In
Independence
Boston.
Day. I'll let that go.
I know, don't worry, that the irony was not lost on us, actually. I think my husband was being a bit, well, my husband to be at that point in time was being a bit of a cheapskate, you know. He said, look, I've arranged fat fireworks for you. And of course he hadn't arranged them. They were happened to be for 4th of
Okay, but
July.
that was clever. I'll give
Yeah.
him points for
Yeah.
that. That was clever.
Uh,
yeah. Like, hello, how did it get to be 4th of July already?
The year is half over this next week.
Well, and we certainly, obviously, aren't going to be recording that day. So, oh my.
All right, but I think we do have a good possibility of recording this Thursday and or next Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what Jenny's going through right now, because it's been 4 weeks since mine, but it was, I'm kind of recovered, barely. And I
There's a
keep
lot of
reminding
life.
myself, sorry,
There's a lot of life going on. There
there's
is.
a lot of life going on. And
There's
when I
just a
think
lot.
about Jenny, you know, versus the things that I'm juggling, they're like, she's got 2 kids. That she's like,
Yeah.
I
Do you know
my
where
hat
she
is off
got,
to
where her,
parents.
where
I-
she's moving to? Do you know where she got a place?
It's in Fort Lauderdale.
It is.
So it's in the area, and
Reach
she
out
said
to
it was a house, a 3-2 with a fenced-in
Okay.
yard, and that it'll do the job for now. I will say, and I've been very open with her about this too, you know, I like to think that I'm fairly surrendered where I choose to be about, you know, big things in life. And when she mentioned that she was moving to Australia, it landed with, you know, I assume everything that is always happening for us and not to us. And, you know, but my personal preference wouldn't have been that, you know, for, you know, even though she's a morning person, Lori, so she could have accommodated our schedule. It wouldn't have been as easy. There wouldn't have been as much flexibility. And frankly, you know, we see each other here. So I would have missed her. And it's kind of feeling now that that might not be happening. You all picked up on that?
Yeah, she indicated that might be changing again, so.
And I think because the situation was, the reason that they would be going was that Jamie's sister's not well. But
Right.
because of the delay of bringing the cats over, he's going to spend some time this summer. And that 6 months from now might be just too late and not. So again, I'm trying to be unattached, but I wouldn't be unhappy if she didn't move to Australia.
None of us would. So,
We
I-
love
I
you,
also-
Jenny.
We love you, Jenny, and I also, just as an aside, I have a lot of friends there, and I have, get information about some of the things that are going on there. And they really were in a police state situation a few years ago. And I lived there for a few years, and I loved it. And there was, some possibility that I would have stayed. And looking back, I'm like really, really, really glad that I didn't. That country is going in a worse direction, I think, than this one. And I wouldn't step foot on that soil again,
okay,
personally.
Don't
so
worry, Jenny.
Let's go.
Susan's not trying to put you off because Jenny will be watching.
Stay
No,
here in
no,
crazy
I
Florida.
said that to her.
Stay here in
you know.
crazy Florida.
Again, what I'm prepared to surrender to whatever the highest good is, but I do have some personal preferences, and
right.
that it is
Okay.
what it is. But it looks like that's the way it might be unfolding.
So Susan, you sent out the information about our podcast. Did you get any responses or questions or?
I did not. I will say about that newsletter. Jenny and I were both like kind of mortified, and this would again, in everything happening for us and not to us, I was asking myself what the lesson was, and one of them was never to send anything out without Sherry looking at it, because she would have picked up on this. But this was such, I'm embarrassed. I'll just tell you what happened, and the fact that I didn't question it and she didn't is embarrassing. I had asked Jenny to set up a newsletter template on MailChimp so that I could have something nicer, to go out to my larger list, because I'd like to do something quarterly. And Dave Grind had set up something for GWT on MailChimp that I thought was quite attractive. She set it up on Canva, which she's great at, and it has so many more design things, but I didn't connect that when you do it on Canva, you transfer each page as a PDF, that it's a static page and the links are not live. And I knew that years ago. The fact that we did this over a period of months and didn't question that is just kind of embarrassing. So just again, you need to get that out of the way so it never happens again when it's something really important. And I did what you probably saw is I sent the live links the following day, but all of the work that we put into that was just ridiculous. So I got just a couple of emails from friends, saying, hi, great to hear from you. Let's get together, but no official response to anything.
Okay, well, and emails, people, I think they read social media more than they read their emails. So as I
It
had
helps. I didn't read it. I've only just literally read it because I've had so many emails come in. It went in and it just went over the top of my head. So you probably haven't got to worry too much.
Let's go back to this. Susan, were you able to change Lori's link yet on the
Yes,
website?
that I did right away.
Okay.
And
It's done.
that was correct in both of them.
Done.
Whatever
Okay.
went, should have been correct.
All right.
The thing that was driving that going out when it did was I had made a promise to Michelle Kaplan that I was going to put out something talking about her event for tomorrow night. So this needed to go out by last week.
It's
And again,
tomorrow night. Okay.
I should have known all of that. So I will have a different format for the next newsletter, but at least that's getting out there. And I do, we were talking last week about our contact numbers, and I was sharing that I had cleaned up that list, and it's pretty small right now. It's only about 400 people, but it's people that really have been following me for a long time. And, I do hear when we speak like, oh yeah, I'm always glad to get your newsletters and, stay on top of what you're doing and all of that stuff. So at least it's out there, but no, I really didn't hear
I was
anything.
just curious. Yeah.
Anything with the VA? Any follow-up with the VA yet?
Again, full disclosure, I sent her a note saying, can we meet? She sent me back a time. I didn't see it. I missed it. I sent another one. I'm
All right, so we need
I'm
to put that in place. No, this is just following up
yeah, no,
on
thank
things
you.
that we talked about. Same thing with Robin. Anything with Robin yet?
I am going to see her on Saturday.
Okay, great.
We have an appointment to get together and go to the E-System and have lunch. And I will have a full thing to pick her brain. But as I said to you, because I've been thinking about a lot of this, as well, in terms of the structures, I think we do need to create an entity. I think we need to be, planning for something to be successful. And I'm not sure that a joint venture would allow us to open a bank account. And I think there could be some complications with the fact that Leslie's in another country. So I'm pretty sure that Robin is going to advise us to set up an actual structure. But I will get that, directly from her mouth on Saturday.
Excellent.
Good,
But
okay.
does that make sense? Just again, given everything we're talking about, I
think so.
it feels important to me that, we're reverse engineering an empire.
100%. Let's plan for success.
In fact, just to add to that, and I think I shared this last week and don't need to take a lot of time, but I'm also looking to relaunch the membership community as well as a women's wealth program that Jenny and I are putting together. And I realistically at this point see that happening in September. And I just kind of see like this summer being devoted very deliberately and, properly to a September launch of a whole bunch of things. Like I actually mapped out the URLs I'm using for the website and the membership community and the pages that I need and the social media accounts that I need to set up, and all of that stuff, to actually set up a calendar. And I'm almost feeling like a drumbeat to be planning for something really to be done correctly. And that, this is, not just part of, but kind of central to. So like in my world, there's this summer to do all of this exactly right with enough time to do it and drip out all the correct marketing. I have a really, really good feeling about this. And all of us. And I was, again, as I was rereading the book, she talks about the people in our lives. Sherry popped off. The people in our lives, and the resources that we are for each other.
Yeah, it's really, really, really important. Just like we get rid of old clothes and old shoes that don't serve us anymore, we have to really clean up our connections with people, right? And interactions with people.
That was something, by the way, Lori, that I didn't remember. This was the third time I read the book, and I didn't remember this, but toward the end, that was one of the things that was said, was that the right relationships are really, really important. And it sounded like the harshest thing that she said, which was that bad relationships need to be let go of.
They say, you really are representative of the 5 people that you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
So who are those 5? And it's so important to have female friends. I read somewhere that it's not having strong female relationships is as bad as smoking cigarettes for your health. So maybe I need to move to Fort Lauderdale.
Come on down. Come on down.
Southwest is having a deal on airfares, and tickets to Fort Lauderdale for
$54?
No, but 108. I was like, what?
And that's a pretty important number.
Yeah, 54 one way. I saw it.
Lori, if that's the case and you can manage it, you know, Jenny's here, you know, it's summer. We talked about having like a little mini retreat that we could, you know, try to include Leslie in as much as possible. But if it's that easy, that, you know, we could make that happen. I think there would be a lot of value to it. You know, what I was saying last week about, you know, we've been doing this just on a couple of hours a week. We haven't had the benefit, you know, of having like an expansive time to hammer things out.
Right. Do you guys have a professional photographer down there that you like?
No.
And I
It's
can
a
reach
miss.
out to somebody that I used to work with. I haven't, I mean, I mean, I know a couple of people that I could reach out to, but with what you're talking about, Lori, it's kind of a little segue. I know one of the things we talked about, and I thought we need to discuss with Leslie too, was about the AI image versus, you know, a photograph or a real image. Because that came up in our conversation and Leslie wasn't there to be part of it.
Mm.
So-
Right.
If I can summarize
Yes.
about that,
So
Jenny actually has a very good ability to Photoshop. She had put something together last year for herself and Tracy and me for an event that we did. And I'm very glad to have AI as a tool. And I think the images that they generated of you weren't bad, but they weren't you.
No.
And I really would have a preference for this, for us to use our real images to share with the world if we can. And I think Jenny probably has some skills so that if we have good enough quality images that she can create something that could look really good. So we'd like to go for that. And I think she said, I sent her a picture that isn't, you know, it was taken at an event it wasn't a particularly good photo. It was just the best one I've got right now. But I would think we do need new photos. Most of us, and she said for two of you at least, they were so pixelated that she couldn't really work with them very well.
Mm.
It's a good. I don't have a photographer, and
I'll reach
you all
out.
know how
Yeah, I
unhappy I
have.
was with.
Before I come to London, I have a photographer.
Okay.
Isn't it always the way? The person who's furthest away has the
Yeah.
connection.
I'll reach out. I have a photographer that I've worked with, has done events for me and things like that, who's local. And I'll see, you know, if he's available and what he would charge and see if I can get him to.
I have a Facebook friend. I know her, but I haven't met her in real life. She lives in Miami, so she's in Florida.
That's not too far. Okay.
She may well know somebody, you know, a good photographer locally. So I can make contact with her and ask her if she can make a recommendation, if that would help.
Okay. And we can probably ask around here too. I
Okay.
haven't.
I just reached out to a friend of mine who worked with a photographer a couple of years ago, and the branding shots that she had done are unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's another good point, Lori, is maybe instead of just, you know, thinking photographer, of like somebody who can kind of do what we want.
Okay.
I think I don't. Last year when we had some pictures taken for GWT with a professional photographer that Clive knew, and she's a professional photographer, and I absolutely fucking hated what she did. Not just didn't like it, I fucking hated it.
Wow.
And it seemed like anybody who was a professional should have known better than to pose me that way, or to have me wear that necklace that wasn't going to fit in a square shot, and to do dark hair against the dark background. So just the fact that somebody's a photographer doesn't necessarily, in fact, I'm going to go off just on a tiny rant about that because I did a shoot about 12 years ago in New York for a project with two other people, and it was really, really expensive. You know, we wanted to get it done right. and whoever made the decision, they were really excellent fashion photographers. And the photos that they did of us were so horrible that a friend of mine who was a photographer saw my picture on the website and said to my friend, tell Susan I will redo hers for free. I can't
my
live in a world
Wow.
where somebody I know has something out there in public that's that bad.
Wow.
So I guess, so I'm suggesting that we get a little clearer about our intention, okay? That we'd like to find somebody who can capture of us what we want to be captured. Not
Yeah.
just aesthetically, but, you know, our essence, you know, just have a sense of the vibe of the show and who we are together. Because I've had the experience in the past, both paying and not paying professional photographers where they weren't the right ones at all
Right.
for what was needed.
Right. So if you share your screen, or let me share my screen, I'll
No.
show you.
Okay, I just gave you the security. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
So what you just said was important. You know, somebody who
Where you
has that focus.
Right. I'm trying to find the right screen share. Why is it making it this difficult? Hang on. I don't want that one. I want, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is her Facebook page. And these are some photos of her. She's in the blue dress here. And she's an attractive woman anyway, but
Mhm.
so that gives you a sense of her spirit. And check this out. That
Oh,
was
wow.
one of the headshots they came up with. I
Okay.
don't know how many pictures are on here, but I've seen them all and they're all like amazing. She really captured her true essence. Look at that.
I like it. Okay.
That's a great shot.
Right? Like, and who would even think to pose like that?
Yep, I see what you mean.
So whoever did this did a phenomenal job. So I just
Okay.
reached out to her and said, who is that person? And I'll get their contact info and maybe they know someone, because she lives up in Rhode Island. So I'm assuming that's probably where this person is.
Okay. But again, we get really clear about our intention of finding somebody who can capture what we want to be showing of our essence and who we are and all of that.
Yeah, if I'm going to pay to have professional photography done, I want that kind of a look. I want somebody to really take me and go, all right, we're going to glam you up a little bit. And here's the poses and here's the way to shift your clothes. This whoever did that, that's not her. I mean, it describes her essence, but this woman's a sailor. She's not a fashionista. She would have never thought to pose like that, to look exactly like that. And yet it doesn't not look like who she is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the lady that posed me last year, Lori, just my pet peeve, I was wearing very deliberately a boat neck collar that was navy, because I think that is really a fabulous neckline in, you know, on like you've worn that. She had me hunched over so that it gapped. I can't even believe that I accepted those shots or even listened to her. It was so wrong.
Well, we'll fix that.
Yes, we will. All right. I'm just looking at the time. I'm kind of sensing Jenny's probably not going to jump on with us today. I supposedly have that lady calling me back in 21 minutes to get something done with my phone.
Yes. And so our intention on Thursday is to re-record.
Yes.
So
So a couple things. One, we want to do that on the Unleashed Zoom. So we need an invitation from Jenny for that.
I'm gonna put that in the WhatsApp group right now.
Okay. We had suggested, and I think this is probably a good idea at this point because it's been a few weeks, to go back and look at the recording of the last one because we really liked it. The problem was that we didn't get, all of us on the screen. But I think for me at least, I am going to go back and take a look at that because we really liked the content and the energy of it. So I'll put that recording in the WhatsApp group so that's accessible if anybody else wants to. So let me write that down. Obviously,
Tuesday,
we'll,
no, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, is it not Thursday? Because Thursday is your holiday.
No,
Independence
that's
next
Day.
week.
Thursday.
Next
A
week.
week from Thursday is the 4th of July.
Oh, this coming Thursday. Sorry, do you know I've been all over the place. So this
I know,
Thursday.
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
sorry. Yeah, understand. Yeah.
This
Okay.
this month has been such a freaking blur.
So we have really Thursday and Tuesday, and then it's 4th of July, and then the following week, I'm in Sedona that week,
Right.
and Leslie's, we're both gone on the 11th.
Okay.
And then on the 16th, you're both out, and you're both out on the 18th. There's 2 weeks where you're both out.
I could potentially be available on the 16th. My meetings start a little later that day. So I could potentially be there.
I
So,
won't be able.
but we're looking at the middle of July after that, like
Right.
the 23rd of July, to get whatever we don't get done soon is going to be middle of July.
Okay.
Right.
Then again, let's really have an intention that we get a recording that we can ask the VA to start working on so that we can see if that's viable and start getting some pieces of it. Because again, what I'm sensing in the past, I've often felt that I was in a catch-up mode. We've been talking here about like we have like a 2-month plus timeline for a launch, like to do this right. And there are things that we can be doing even if we're not meeting on Zoom during that, couple of weeks that we can, delegate out or, be pursuing in the meantime so that, we're not losing momentum.
Right.
At the very
By
least,
the
we
way,
could be
I'm
reaching-
amused that we kind of were wearing the same thing today. It often happens that at least 2 of us are wearing the same color on any given day.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Right.
Sherry. Oh. Sherry, you were saying,
I'm sorry. At the very least, we could be making contacts or making phone calls with potential guests,
mhm,
so we could at least be finding out what's going on with that.
that's a good idea, a good outreach time for people that we have in mind. In fact, that was a little bit of a message that I got last week for myself, but that I'll just pass on because a couple things happened last week where I had a chance to do something. And it reminded me that that's one of the things I need to start making time for as part of like a regular schedule is what I'm calling like outreach and connection. Because it is so much more comfortable and authentic for me to reach out when I'm not asking for anything or launching something. And I have so many people in my life that, connections that really deserve a little nurturing. And some of them are with women that have big communities of their own. So for me, I was really getting the message that is one of the things to use my time on, especially like at this time of year. Because it'll be way easier to reach out when there are requests to make, when the ground is more fertile, and that really is authentic for me. like there was a little thing, I felt really good about it where somebody on Facebook was saying, who does anybody know anybody, in this field, basically. And I knew somebody to recommend and I tagged her. And it's somebody who's like on my radar, who's down here. She's a midwife. We've been Facebook friends. I met her in person. We meant to cultivate a relationship and never did. And I'm thinking, this is a good opportunity for me to follow up and, hey, you want to meet for tea? She has her own thing. And I think it's part of the energy of what we're about to, be breathing, life into connection, not just when we want something, but because, we know that there's value just in building relationships. So anyway, that was a message that I got. And on the heels of that, I think reaching out to some of the prospective guests in advance, this would be a really good time to do that.
Oh, 100%, because we're going to want to, if we're going to launch in September, we're going to have to do some serious recording in August.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you saw this, but Riverside actually was doing today as we speak, or right before this, that would have been a live demo of their new conversation studio. So they're making some new features. And then on July 3rd, they're doing a podcasters roundtable where they're going to talk about interview hosting techniques. So I'll forward this to everybody in case you didn't see it.
We can all improve our skills.
Well, yeah, I mean, what a lot of what I've done is back and forth, one-on-one communication. So actually, and Leslie's probably good at it because she has done a lot of podcasts. Interviewing is different than just a conversation.
In fact, I'll see if I can find it. When I was involved with the Win-Win Women Network, which I left because I was very, very disappointed they did not come through with what they said they were going to come through with. But they did some really good stuff in the beginning, some really good trainings. And one of them was on interviewing techniques. And if I can find that recording of it, it might be worth sharing.
Yeah.
Because they did like a bunch of role plays. And even though I thought I knew a lot about that, I learned some things. So I don't know if I can access that, but if I can, I will. All right. So we are going to show up on Thursday, ready to roll.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having something more to work with. It feels like it's time for things to
Already.
be happening.
Yeah.
I think we need the momentum.
Yeah, that too. And that was another thing that I was reminded of in that the Having book was about building momentum. And that's why I'm really feeling so much about, moving the needle every day. Like I'm really making a point, even with things that don't necessarily have a big outer impact. I'm really making a point to be checking a lot of things off lists every day, just so, my consciousness knows that I'm moving forward with things.
Very important. It was a reminder to me, and I just made a list of a lot of the things that I want to get done to be ready for a September launch. So
yeah, I'm almost like feeling the beat, like it's dripping in. All right. See you Thursday. Hopefully I'll have a phone and be in touch with Jenny between now and then.
What?
Yep, sending her lots of good energy. Jenny for her move, and I'm happy to take any for my phone.
yeah, we're sending you good
I'll
juju.
send it. Yep.
Wow.
Are you going to Michelle's tomorrow? Are you doing Michelle's thing tomorrow night?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. That's our local EE system lady. She has a
Oh.
monthly thing that I'm going to be helping out at.
You guys are just going to need to send me some good dates to come down.
Okay, we'll put our heads together about that.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
See you guys Thursday.
Love you,
Okay.
ladies.
Bye.
Bye.